will. There are some depths to which we have not fallen and never will, we pray. Somewhere between these places, there where we may reach up and reach out to find the strength we need for our journey. This is such a place. Thus we pause for refreshment. Thus we gather in thanksgiving. So be it.
Please join me in reading aloud our covenant as Rosemary lights the chalice, the symbol of our free faith.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is the law. This is our great covenant, to go out together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. Good morning. We welcome you to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church this morning for a service which we have looked forward to for a long time. Today, after 4 years of design study, work, and conversation, and after 15 months of construction, we gather to dedicate our new West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church to the highest and the holiest purposes that we know. I'm Rosemary Masterson, a member of the Worship Associates team. Our dedication ceremony today is the first worship event in our 61st year of service to the West Shore communities. We are especially proud to welcome our special guests this morning, the participants in the service that include both our ministers emerita, all the ministers who had a direct leadership role during the years of this project, leaders and representatives from the City of Rocky River and the companies and organizations that helped us realize this project, and members of our church staff and choir. The full list of participants is on the back of your order of service. Our co-ministers' family members from Gimli, Manitoba and Akron, Ohio are here, and there are members and friends we haven't seen for a while. We're so glad all of you can come today. This afternoon at 2 p.m., we're having a special ceremony of thanks that will recognize the invited guests who are coming to the community open house, including many of the workers whose hard work and craftsmanship we're enjoying today. Church members are warmly invited to that ceremony as well. There will be music, food, guided tours offered all afternoon until 5 p.m. So tell your friends and neighbors to come by as well. We want to welcome as well another group of special guests, those who have come to visit us for the first time, attracted by today's events perhaps, or in search of a liberal religious community that might become your church home. It is a great Sunday to be a guest here at West Shore, and the people who are sitting near you would like to say hello and welcome you after the service is over. If you're comfortable doing so, we'd love to have you raise your hand if you're a first-time visitor to make it easier for us to do just that as we leave the sanctuary today. Any first-time visitors? Good morning. Good morning. We're having an evening orientation to the church, especially for newcomers, this Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Please stop by the welcome table just off the rotunda in the east hallway to sign up this evening, focused on the programs and opportunities for involvement here at West Shore Church. There has been a huge effort this week on the part of our construction managers and landscaping firm to have the building completed for this weekend. And so we're proud to invite you to join us after the service in Bercaw Hall for coffee, refreshments, and a lunch service that starts at 12 noon. Bercaw Hall is found through the central rotunda and down the west hall. If you're a regular attender at our services, you should know that all the usual tables that inform you about our social action ministries, our upcoming service auction, and that offer sales of tickets to Saturday night performances, Spoon River Anthology, fair trade coffee, and grocery certificates will all be down in Bercaw Hall today or in Conference Room D directly off Bercaw Hall. Conference Room D is also the location today for ongoing sign-ups for the connection circles, the monthly small group experiences of deep listening and speaking about the life issues and themes suggested by our services, or about topics that are connected to common characteristics of affinities. There are a number of other written announcements about upcoming events in the order of service, which we hope you'll take home and read at your leisure. It was during the interim ministry of Reverend Roy Phillips that an architect selection committee was appointed by the Board of Trustees to interview and select an architect for renovation of West Shore Church. Although funds had been raised to pay for an initial design during the ministry of Reverend Michael McGee at the time of the 50th anniversary, this selection committee was the first concrete step toward realizing the dream of a new West Shore Church. So it's wonderful that Reverend Phillips is here to take us back to that beginning and to the fundamental question we had to ask ourselves at that time. What's the building for?
And look at you now. Jim, Andy, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Unitarian minister, philosopher, spiritual leader, essayist, was very clear. He said, there are no miracles, except the one miracle. You know, the one miracle. My religion, my theology, my spirituality is naturalistic, not supernaturalistic. That means something like everything has to be somewhere. Every spirit somewhere, tangible, incarnate, someplace. If they say love, but there is no loving behavior that you can see and feel, then there is no love. Religious naturalism. Everything real, every spirit has to be someplace, in somebody, among some persons or creatures, things, somewhere in the real world. That is location, location, location. Every real thing or spirit has to be someplace. So how about the Milky Way? The solar system? How about the spirit on planet Earth, North America, Ohio, Cleveland, the West Shore? Every spirit has to be someplace. How about 20401 Hilliard Boulevard, Rocky River, Ohio? In this magnificent, new, old space you have inherited, maintained, and now recreated. Recreated for the world and all the people, young and old, including yourselves. How about the Spirit right here? The Spirit is here, is palpable. I can feel it, and I can see it, and so can you. In this project, the Spirit is embedded. It shows as your daring to lead, as your hope, as your trust, as your generosity, as your collective self-affirmation. And since the doors are open, it shows as your affirmation of those who are yet to come here, new to you. It shows that as you love, it is there. It shows in the love you have for those who are yet to come. Over the past few days, I have walked up and down the corridors of your renewed space, and into and out of the chapel, and in the kitchen, and the restrooms, and all the classrooms, and meeting rooms, and offices, and sat with you, many of you in Baker's Hall last night. As I look at the colors, as I see the shapes and feel the textures, it feels to me, it has felt to me like I have been receiving a full body massage. I love it. I am welcomed by this space. I take delight in it. The space itself surrounds me, and I feel walking around in it. I feel as though I am being loved. Quite an achievement. In the Middle Ages, there was this question. We've all heard it. Maybe we dismiss it. How many angels can dance on the point of a pin? We dismiss it as irrelevant and silly, an example of how irrelevant philosophy and theology can be. But for them back then, it was a way of affirming something about art and about the Spirit. What is the relationship between the angels and the point of a pin? That is, for them, the angels were pure spirit. The point of a pin was pure matter. What is the relationship between matter and spirit? How can they be mixed together? That's the question of art. That's the question of the spiritual life. How many angels can run down the aisle of this sanctuary and up around the other aisles and here along in the chancel? How many angels can be here at West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church, pass through the wall and into your new space? How much spirit can there be? How many angels can run up and down the corridors? I picture them whirling sparklers in each and every one of the classrooms, a flaming chalice, in Baker Hall, in the kitchen, and in those restrooms, and the classrooms, and the offices. How many angels can whirl and spin around and round in that magnificent rotunda? How many? How much spirit? For how long will they and you cast blessings upon all who gather here?
Lord,
Our reading from an ancient source this morning is from the second book of Chronicles, excerpts from chapters 5 and 6. This is the prayer prayed by Solomon at the dedication of the temple in the 10th century BCE. So the temple was finally finished. Then Solomon brought in the gifts dedicated to the Lord by his father, King David. Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in the presence of the whole assembly of Israel and spread out his hands. Then he knelt on his knees in the presence of the whole assembly of Israel and spread out his hands toward heaven. He said, "O God of Israel, there is none like you, in heaven or on earth, keeping covenant and steadfast love with your servants who walk before you with all their heart. But will Yahweh indeed reside with mortals on earth? Even heaven and the highest heaven cannot contain you. How much less this house that I have built? Regard your servant's prayer and his plea. May your eyes be open day and night toward this house, the place where you promised to set your name. And may you heed the prayer that your servant prays toward this place." Our reading from a modern source comes from the writings of Adrian Rich, Transcendental Etude. No one ever told us we had to study our lives. Make of our lives a study, as if learning natural history or music, that we should begin with the simple exercises first, and slowly go on trying the hard ones, practicing till strength and accuracy became one with the daring leap into transcendence. Take the chance of breaking down the wild arpeggio or faulting the full sentence of the fugue. And, in fact, we can't live like that. We take on everything at once before we've even begun to read or mark time. We're forced to begin in the midst of the hard movement, the one already sounding as we are born.
Realizing the dream of our new building has involved many, many people, all of whom have been bearers of that dream, and all of whom have helped to bring it to fruition. This afternoon at 2 p.m. there will be a ceremony of thanks here in the sanctuary that will describe and express gratitude for the contributions not only of all of these bearers of the dream who are standing here before you this morning, but also all of the members of the construction trades and crafts whose hard work actually made this building real. Several of the people who are standing before you today, all of whose names are in your order of service, have played key roles in this project and deeply deserve individual thanks from all of us. But today they stand here also as representatives of others that supported and stand behind them. So we want to recognize through them everybody that was involved in this project today. We are going to ask you to hold the well-deserved applause that I'm sure you will be feeling like you want to give until the ceremonial key to our building has been passed along this road, one by one, and until we get it to the president of the church as this ceremony concludes.
Rosemary Masterson has the key to our new building, and she is the first bearer of the dream because today she is representing the hundreds of members of the congregation who participated in the discussion that began in 2002 with our Turnabout Sunday. And that was devoted to collecting building design ideas. And we also want to recognize those who supported the capital campaign with pledges that continue to make possible the realization of our dream.
The person who became the next bearer of the dream and receives the key next was the person who listened to all of this input from all of these congregation members and staff. Chris Oval of City Architecture, our project architect. Chris gave us several designs at first, was asked to expand the possibilities for these designs, and then was asked to reduce them as we worried about the financial implications. His creativity, his patience, his determination, and his persuasion gave us a design which we have been proud to realize. Chris has many colleagues at City Architecture who have helped to bring this to fruition, and we are grateful to each and all of them.
All of the resources to carry this dream forward could not be realized without borrowing the money that we could not raise ourselves. The City of Rocky River has been an important partner for us and for our friends at National City Bank in the financing of the portions of the building that house the West Shore Child Care Center, recognized as an asset to this community. Brian Hagan, president of the Rocky River City Council, represents the many city officials and staff who have offered us assistance along the way as we negotiated the countless details of the project that required city facilities, services, and approvals. We are proud to be part of the Rocky River community, and we appreciate Councilman Hagan's willingness to share this happy day with us.
Everything about a building project is literally a dream in somebody's head until the construction managers get their hands on it. The Krill Company has done an outstanding job on the many difficult twists and turns that we have encountered in this journey of construction. Dan Audia as Senior Contract Manager and Al Abiglin, our Construction Superintendent, have been so generous with their time, their ideas, and their creativity. We are deeply grateful to each of them personally and to all of the Krill staff and the contractors that they have represented. Now, as Al receives this key from Dan, he is going to pass it on to Andy Kasorik and Jim Hamilton, but he's going to pass it on with something that Andy is going to be very glad to see, a little envelope which has a certificate of occupancy.
Imagine the scope or the importance of the role that must be played by volunteers from the congregation who act as the point of contact and decision-making for a project like ours. Andy Kasorik, the senior project manager for the church, and his assistant Jim Hamilton have not only had to be the bearers of the dream that the architect had, but mediators of the dream for every church and staff member along the way who had a different picture in their heads of how some one aspect of the dream was supposed to be realized. So Andy and Jim, your congregation is so very proud and deeply grateful for the way you have represented us in making this dream real. We cannot thank you enough.
No person in their right minds would take a job at a church that is about to enter into a construction project. We are so grateful that none of our staff members are in their right minds. The only one of us, Neil Davis, all but one of us is what I should say. All but one of us, and that was Neil Davis, came onto this staff knowing that this project was going to be happening and that it would be an added burden on top of the normal routine of our work for as long as 2 years. The staff of our child care center has been asked to endure 2 significant moves, a reduction in their classroom and play spaces by half during the construction process, and many other challenges. And so we've asked Karen O'Hagan, right there, as the director of the child care center, to stand here with us as a bearer of the dream and to convey to all of her staff how much we have appreciated their commitment and their forbearance, as well as their extraordinary work day after day. Debbie Lyden is here as the staff member who has had the most consistent responsibility for the staff relationship with the building project, and she has managed this with so much grace and skill. She represents the 7 other members of our staff who have helped carry the dream forward to this day. Not all of the staff members who started this journey with us have been able to stay with us until the end, and so we particularly want to remember and thank our former facilities managers, Joe and Pat Schofield, our former administrator, Nancy Milan, and Reverend Tamara Labak, our intern and sabbatical minister, each of whom carried this dream alongside us.
Finally, the key is passed to Marie Grossman, the president of our board of trustees. Marie represents not only the current board, but the 6 boards and finance committees encompassing about 30 different members who have led the congregation through this process. In the period since the architect was chosen, we have been served by Presidents Luke Minnis, Tammy Hansen, Alan Ayers, Gary Knutson, Phil Reed, and Marie Grossman. In giving the key to Marie, we recognize with profound gratitude to all these bearers of the dream the great gift that this congregation has received from you and given to the future of this congregation. So join with me now in expressing our appreciation.
It is indeed an honor and privilege for me to be included in this ceremony and to be here and renew acquaintances and friendships with so many of you. It's been a delightful weekend. I'm so proud to be here and to be included. Now let us join in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Infinite Spirit, pervades the universe and dwells in us all. We rededicate this church and its people to the continuing witness of liberal religion, a beacon of hope in a world besieged and surrounded by the religious right, to the continuing task of ending racism in all its insidious forms, to the service of justice, that civil rights may extend to all people, and civil liberty be the blessing of our democracy. For all its members and friends, and the community at large. To minister to all souls in distress who are in suffering or in sorrow, may this church continue to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. And in so doing, continue the search for spiritual enlightenment in these troubling times. Amen.
Very first hymn in our hymnal, one I used to know as Prayer for This House. These words, may nothing evil cross this door. Let's stand and sing.
wrote, "When you have come to the edge of all you know and are about to step off into the unknown, faith is knowing that one of two things will happen. There will be something solid to stand on, or you will be taught how to fly." Now, I've got to admit, I have used that poem and image quite a few times in speaking to churches about great acts of faith. And when we decided to call this short sermon today, "Daring to Leap," it was the first thing that came into my mind. But then as I thought about it, I remembered who I would be preaching to. A Unitarian Universalist church, filled with people who have an appreciation for the rational approach to religion, as well as to good metaphysical poetry. And I knew that after the sermon, someone would be bound to come up to me. It would probably be George Bliss. And he would say, "You know, Wayne, when that poem said only one of two things would happen when you step off that cliff into the unknown, it's not true. There's a third thing. Maybe you would find solid ground. Just possibly you would be taught how to fly. But you could also fall flat on your face." And I would have to agree with him. We certainly really would not be a UU church if we didn't admit that we took a risk in building this building, and that this risk does have three possibilities that lie before us. We could find the solid ground of our next steps and pretty much continue doing what we've been doing, hopefully doing it well and better. We could be taught how to fly and make our way to an entirely different level of being a church together. Or we could fall flat on our faces. So I said to Kathleen, maybe we shouldn't use that poem today.
So when it came my turn to come up with an appropriate image for this sermon about daring to leap, maybe something we could put on the order service, something that we could put on the cover of the order service, I came up with a great idea. Mexican cliff divers. Fearless men and presumably women who jump off a cliff 136 feet above the Pacific Ocean into 9.5 feet of water. And this celebration week has felt that momentous and is the culmination of years of preparation and laying the foundation to achieve such an accomplishment. Especially these past 15 months, it has felt like we have been asked to jump off one cliff or another almost weekly, moving out of the old building and into our adjacent Northview house space, keeping the child care center open during construction, moving back into temporary space, the list goes on and on. Each time, when we have needed to, we have jumped and landed safely in waters deep enough to sustain us. Ultimately, however, I decided against the cliff diving image for the order of service because it celebrates the accomplishment of one lone diver, the one who trains and prepares and has to be accountable to no one but him or herself. So instead, I chose a picture of our own rotunda dome, taken by church photographer Ami Young. Her picture reminds me of the fact that this architectural feature of our new building reveals the two qualities of our religion that I hold sacred. In the bright light of day, it is a window to the sky, to the highest and holiest we know. And in the dark of night, or even on a gray Cleveland winter day, it reflects back to us who we are together, multiplied by the many panes of glass in the web of life that the rotunda dome contains, so that we are challenged to be more than what we are now.
7 years ago, many of us here will remember that there was an uneasy feeling in this congregation. We were concerned, and I would even say depressed, about the condition of the building. We were saddened by the departure of Reverend Michael McGee, and we were uncertain about the future. David and Iska Cole had moved to Maine, and Mitch Squire was preparing to retire. And the sense of continuity and stability that they represented, these two embodiments of two fine ministries and all of the people and programs that they had been involved with, all this left us with some feeling of uncertainty. The church had really come to an edge. It had to make some decisions. Would it fall or would it fly? And I think since that point 7 years ago, this church has made some daring decisions to call kind of a risky co-ministry team, to listen to some radical advice from two interim ministers, Roy Phillips and Art LeBoy, to hire an architect, to take the leap of entrusting the church presidency to one strong leader for an unprecedented 3-year period, Gary Knudsen, during the entire planning process that led up to our construction starting. Then to vote and to approve the renovation of this entire structure. And then to continue on to make another big leap, to move forward on the biggest capital campaign that we had ever undertaken in our history. And when we asked George and Jerry Blomgren to chair that campaign, they stepped up to the edge of that cliff and dove in. All of these were big leaps, the consequences of which we see today and we celebrate today. But we aren't finished leaping yet. When Andy Kazorik tells you that this project isn't finished yet, he's talking about, no doubt, a punch list of details. But when I tell you that this project isn't finished yet, I'm talking about some of the things that Roy Phillips was pointing to. The ways that the building is an incarnation, that the building is not an end in itself, but just a beginning. Another edge from which we must leap.
Making the decision to leap, however, is not leaping into darkness and fog. Some of the risks we are taking are calculated, and none of us think that we are alone in daring to leap. We believe that liberal religion in Northeast Ohio will grow and flourish, and we remember that we are in the good company of 10 other congregations in our region. We believe that our religious education programs and our child care center are among the very best in the area. We believe that our building will be in demand by members of the western suburb communities who find here not only an attractive space, but sympathetic support for liberal religious ideals and values. We believe that this newly refurbished building will increase an interest in West Shore as a religious institution, and that we will really take off. But we are not there yet. Adrienne Rich reminds us of the necessity of doing things one step at a time, one leap at a time. She reminds us that we should begin with the simple exercises, then slowly go on trying the hard ones. She reminds us that we cannot get ahead of ourselves too quickly. We have to have patience with the completion of this building process and with one another, because although we have the occupancy permit, there is much work to be done. There is finishing work to be completed. There are matters of signage to be determined. There is artwork to be hung. And there are new patterns of movement during coffee hour to figure out. So we aren't done yet. The truth of the matter is that we as individuals are not stepping off into the unknown as solo divers. We have taken this giant leap of faith together. And at this point in our church life, we are neither falling nor flying. It's more like we are leaping from stone to stone, as if crossing a river, a rocky river. Does that sound familiar? We services around the theme of dedication, talking about water at our water ceremony service. So perhaps the best image for the kind of leap we are doing is an image associated with the leaps involved in crossing a rocky river. 2 winters ago, Wayne and I and a friend were hiking in the mountains just outside of Tucson, Arizona. The water was unseasonably high, and we had to cross as many as a dozen streams on our way up to the top of the mountain. And after about the 4th unsuccessful attempt to leap across the rocks, my friend and I, we just gave up. We took off our shoes, we barreled through the water, we put back on our shoes and squished along until the next stream crossing. Now, Wayne, on the other hand, took his time. And after storming through the stream, my friend and I sat down to watch Wayne cross the river. And I have to tell you, it's not unlike watching a kung fu master. Wayne would stop, gather his attention, and then leap onto the boulder, maintain his balance, wait, and then leap again until he was safely across. Now, it took twice as long to get up the mountain, or at least I thought so. But the truth of the matter was that by the time we got there, my feet were so cold and so wet that I was not really enjoying the journey anymore. And although Wayne's approach was more deliberate and to my mind maddeningly slow, it was in the long run the right approach. So we too must consider carefully each of the smaller leaps that lay before us that make up this daring leap. And some of the leaps are obvious. We will be asked to be more generous and more careful stewards of our financial health than we have ever been before. For the building we have given ourselves will not be sustained on a wing and a prayer. Living together in closer proximity with the church school and the child care center means recovenanting with our children, our parents, and staff. And as a public facility, we will be asked to host more events, both denominationally and for the larger community. How we respond to those requests will say much about our sense of ourselves as a flagship church, as a leader in the community, and in our own faith tradition. And we can't do it alone. As your ministers, we certainly can't and have no desire to do it alone. Former minister Reverend Michael McGee recalled how much he depended on help from staff, from his colleagues, and from this community when he writes, "When I went to West Shore, I didn't know if I had the wisdom and leadership skills to minister to such a large congregation. And I was right. I didn't have the skills to minister to that congregation by myself. Then I discovered I had a colleague, a staff, lay leaders, and an entire congregation of intelligent, wise, creative people who were able and willing to share the ministry with me. I discovered that the ministry is more than one person, that it is a calling shared by the members and friends of the church. Once we combined our wisdom and skills, we discovered that we could accomplish great things." This beautiful new building is a stunning accomplishment. It's a legacy that each member can rightfully claim as his or her own. But let's not get too caught up in our own flights of fancy just yet, lest we find ourselves like Icarus flying too closely to the sun. Instead of flying, let us take our leap one stone at a time until strength and accuracy become one with our daring to leap into transcendence. May it be so.
We prepare now for our act of dedication, actually the official ribbon cutting as well in this church. And we're going to do that in the company of all of our children from the church school. As we receive the offering, we're going to ask parents of the youngest children to go get your kids and bring them into the sanctuary, and the teachers of the older children from K up are bringing the classes in just as soon as the offering has been taken up.
Our offering, of course, has a symbolic meaning in this service in terms of representing the qualities of generosity that we believe are a part of a religious life, and a practical meaning in terms of being an opportunity for your pledges or gifts to the life of West Shore Church to be received at this time. The offering will now be taken up.
Just look around you. Look at the faces around you. Isn't it a wonderful sight? Generations of families, some who span the entire 60 years of our existence, and some who are so new to this community that they have no idea how this building looked before we began the renovation. We could tell them, I guess. We are West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church, every man, woman, and child of us. And we have a proud history and a promising future because of each of you and because of those who came before us and those who will follow us. My task this morning is to charge or challenge the congregation. And that means all of us, for I definitely include myself in this congregation. Mostly I have a list of things which I hope all of us will remember as we settle into our new home. And I'm just going to wait for these last few to come down. Because these are some things I'd like you to remember. And this is not just for the adults, it's for the children too. These are things that you need to remember about your new church home. Remember that we, the people here, are the church. And the building is the building. The building makes it easier and certainly more comfortable for us to be a church, but it is not the church. It is a symbol of our close association with one another and the spiritual bonds which draw us together. Remember to worship in the building, but not to worship the building. And by this I mean, take good care of it, but be sure to use it for all the things that a church community needs to do. Use it expansively in ways that we have tried in the past, and in ways which we have not even dreamed of. Use it in the true spirit of community, sharing its space and its resources with one another and with the greater community. Fill this house. Fill it with your presence, with your laughter, your joy, your tears, and your sorrows. My goodness, there are a lot of children. Have a seat. Fill it so much that it overflows into the community, so that all may know of our welcome for them and our dedication to serving those around us. Be patient with the building. We need to adjust to one another. We will use the building in ways our architect and contractors never imagined. Perhaps ways that you've never imagined. At first it will seem strange and unfamiliar. You may find yourself longing for things the way they were before. But whenever we move or seriously renovate, we have to find our way around new space. And we will find our way. I am sure of it. Make this a home of worship, of ideas, of friendships, of the arts. Be open and forgiving as others work to make it their home too. We don't know what West Shore Church will be after another 60 years, but we can be sure that we will be different from what we are now. And finally, let's remember to live up to our mission, to be an inclusive spiritual community, to serve families and individuals of all sorts, and to be a beacon of enlightenment in our community, answering the call to service. Enjoy our new building and encourage others to enjoy it too. It is our springboard to the future.
Out of wood and stone, out of dreams and sacrifice, the people build a home. Out of the work of their hands and hearts and minds, the people fashion a symbol and a reality.
May this house be truly a house of meeting one another in warmth and joy and openness, meeting one another in courage, love, and trust.
May peace indeed walk softly through these rooms, so that every casual corner will bloom into a shrine, so that these walls will indeed keep me out and love them.
We therefore dedicate this building to the highest and holiest that we know, within ourselves, within our world, and within this amazing universe we call our home.
What we're going to try to do is lift up. So you guys who are on the lowest step, you're all going to have to back up and stand on the step so that we can get this ribbon up. Okay? If you can do that now. So that everybody who is on an aisle and everybody who is in the pews can now reach over, stand up, and support this ribbon just the way that we are. And if you put a hand onto the shoulder of somebody who's got a hand on the ribbon, we're all going to be connected here to this thing. Let's make sure it gets all the way back. Okay.
Thumbs up. When we thought about how to do this,
I'm sorry. Is my mic working at all? No? Okay. When we thought about how to do this and who should do this, we felt that the right people to cut the ribbon were our children and youth. No part of the old building needed renovation more than the rooms our children met in. The leap of faith that we took in this new building represented our commitment to be here to serve the generations of people that these children and their children's children represent.
it's hard for 50 young people to cut a ribbon together, but it's not hard for 50 or more of you to dare to leap into our future and cut the ribbon by breaking through it. So on the count of 3, I'd like to see if you can all jump off the steps, or if you're not on the steps, to jump through the ribbon and then go join your families for the last hymn of our service.
So all the kids, I want you to let go of the ribbon. There's just 4 of us going to hold it up. Okay? Is it going to hang in there? You guys might want to hold on to that part. All right. So Kathleen's going to give you the word about jumping.
Okay,
Please don't hurt yourselves.
Right. So do we